So I want you to just picture this for a second. We are setting the scene right in the middle of this vast, like, sweeping desert.
Okay.
You have the classic big-budget Hollywood cinematography, right? Sand is blowing in the wind, and there's this booming, disembodied voice thundering straight down from the heavens.
Oh, I know exactly where this is going.
God is telling Moses to take his wooden shepherd's stick, right, and just throw it down on the ground. And now imagine all the massive CGI special effects kicking in.
Mm-hmm.
The wooden stick hits the sand, and instantly, with this crazy sound effect, it morphs into this gigantic, terrifying python.
Oh.
It's hissing, it's thrashing around. Moses jumps back in, like absolute visceral horror. The cinematic score is absolutely booming in the background.
Oh, please, just stop. Stop right there.
What? The earth is practically shaking? It's the ultimate cinematic spectacle. I mean, it's how we've all been taught to visualize this ancient narrative, right?
Ugh. It is just, it's the absolute definition of a massive roadblock. I mean, that kind of literalism, that deep-seated obsession with, like, parlor tricks and magic shows.
You're not a fan of the blockbuster treatment, I take it.
It completely derails us from understanding the actual social physics being laid out in the Quran. When we reduce these profound texts to, fairy tales with magical transforming sticks and glowing body parts, we completely blind ourselves. We miss the profound political, economic, and structural realities that are actually being discussed.
Okay, but I have to play devil's advocate here for a second, though, because people love the spectacle, right?
Sure, they do.
It's memorable. I mean, it's what you get taught in Sunday school or as a kid. So if we are, like, stripping away the magic trick, what exactly are we replacing it with?
Well, let me completely reframe this dialogue for you, the listener. God is not performing a parlor trick in the desert just to impress a lonely shepherd.
Okay.
Think about the sheer scale of the mission Moses is about to be handed. He is being asked to dismantle a global superpower.
Right, the Egyptian Empire.
Exactly. So in that context, God is asking Moses to perform a strict, uncompromising audit of his current real-world tools of livelihood. Throwing down the staff isn't a magic trick.
It's not just a cool visual.
No, it is a profound ideological directive.
Yeah.
It's a direct order to transition his ordinary everyday resources into a dynamic, fast-moving, socio-political movement.
Wait, really? A socio-political movement?
Yes. What the text actually calls Hayayasa. I mean, this isn't about scaring people with reptiles. It's about engineering a living, breathing movement meticulously designed to destabilize a tyrant.
Okay, wow. That is a massive paradigm shift. We are basically trading the CGI snake for, like, a geopolitical masterclass.
Exactly.
And that means our mission today is crystal clear. We are acting as your lead guides for a deep dive into Tolu Islam digital audio, specifically Lecture 314.
Right.
We are going to completely strip away the cinematic, literal snake and magic tricks of traditional theology, and we're replacing them with the language of strategic asset deployment, organizational physics, and, well, psychological fortitude.
Which is so much more relevant to us today.
Absolutely. We are diving deep into Surah Ta-Ha, verses 17 through 35.
And to really grasp the gravity of this, we have to start exactly where the source material starts. We have to look at this audit of assets.
Okay, let's get into it.
Because if the snake is actually a metaphor for a dynamic, living movement, what does the rest of Moses' initial preparation represent in the real world?
Right.
We have to place ourselves in his shoes before the confrontation even begins.
Right, because before we get to the grand confrontation in Pharaoh's court, there is this profound moment of absolute isolation.
Yes, exactly.
The source paints this stark picture of Moses wandering in the cold desert night with his family. He has lost his way, he's desperate, and he is looking for a literal, physical fire just to keep his family warm.
He's literally out in the cold.
Right. But instead of finding a campfire, he encounters revelation, or wahi.
And this is where the speaker in our source material introduces a truly fascinating concept. They call it the economization of human intellect.
Okay, wait, I want to stop on that phrase. The economization of human intellect. Because I've never heard revelation described as an economizer before. What does that actually mean in practice?
Well, think about the grand sweep of human history, right? Human intellect is incredible, sure.
Oh, yeah.
But it takes centuries, sometimes millennia, of brutal trial and error to find structural truths about how a society should actually be justly organized.
We tend to mess it up a lot first.
Exactly. We build these massive empires, and then they collapse under their own weight. We try feudalism, and it results in mass serfdom and suffering, so, it fails.
Right.
We try different economic models, mercantilism, unchecked capitalism, state communism, And millions of people suffer, generations are lost, and eventually we pivot.
It's a painful process.
It is a long, wandering, excruciatingly painful distance to travel just to figure out what is just and true for human dignity.
So it's basically humanity wandering in the dark desert, freezing, trying to figure out how to build a fire without, like, burning the whole forest down.
That is a perfect analogy. We stumble in the dark. But Revelation Wahi acts as an economizer of that intellectual effort.
Okay.
It cuts straight across those long, wandering distances of human thought. It delivers immediate foundational structural truths so humanity doesn't have to spend another 1,000 years suffering under flawed, oppressive systems.
Just to learn a lesson we could have had from the start.
Exactly. So Moses is standing there in the cold, expecting to find a few burning embers just to survive the night, and instead, he is handed the structural blueprint to dismantle an empire and liberate a people.
Wow. Which brings a whole new weight to the famous question God asks him right at that moment.
Right.
God says, "What is in your right hand, O Moses?" And I've always found Moses' answer to be surprisingly, I don't know, mundane.
How so?
Well, he doesn't say, like, it's a weapon or it's a magical artifact. He just says, it's my staff. I lean on it and I beat down leaves for my sheep with it, and I have other uses for it.
Right, very practical.
Yeah. Why is there such a massive focus on something so incredibly mundane right at the moment he's receiving the ultimate blueprint for liberation?
Because, like we said, it is an audit.
Yeah.
What's fascinating here is the Arabic root and the deep metaphorical weight of the word used for the staff, which is Asa.
Asa, okay.
We have to look at how language functioned in ancient pastoral societies. And Asa isn't just a literal piece of wood. In the linguistic evolution of the time, the root of this word carried the profound meaning of support, economic reliance, and community cohesion.
Oh, interesting. So it's broader than just a stick.
Much broader. Even today, in various languages and cultures, we might say a child is the staff of my old age, meaning they are my foundational support system.
Oh, right. So the Asa represents what he relies on to keep his life stable. It's his baseline economic security.
Yes. The Asa represents a collective grasping, an organizational reliance. It was Moses' entire livelihood, his sole means of survival in this quiet, isolated pastoral life he had built in Midian.
Right, because he had fled Egypt and was just trying to lay low.
Exactly. He was avoiding conflict.
Right.
So when God orders Moses to throw it down, it's not a request to simply, drop a piece of wood on the sand to see a magic trick.
It's a lot heavier than that.
It is a terrifying existential demand. God is telling him to abandon his quiet, isolated pastoral life, abandon his current economic security, let go of the tools he currently relies on,
Wow.
and hurls his entire existence into the center of a geopolitical storm.
He's essentially being told to weaponize his ordinary life. But wait, I want to push back on this a little bit just to make sure we aren't applying, like, modern political buzzwords to an ancient text.
Fair enough.
When he throws it down, the text says it becomes Haya Yasa, which, has almost universally been translated as a slithering literal snake.
Yes, historically it has.
So are we absolutely sure this dynamic movement interpretation holds up linguistically? Or are we just modernizing it to sound cool?
It absolutely holds up, but you have to trace the etymology rather than the mythology.
Okay, unpack that for me.
Our source points out that the root of Haya relates directly to life, vitality, and living energy.
Not necessarily a reptile.
Right. Now,
Yeah.
yes, a snake is called a Haya in Arabic, but that's because it is a creature that seems dormant and then strikes with sudden, terrifying vitality. It's descriptive.
Okay, I see.
But the text adds the word yasa, and yasa implies rapid, energetic movement, striving, or pacing.
So it's not just a snake that slithers, it's a vitality that moves rapidly.
Exactly. It becomes a living, moving, dynamic force. It goes from being a static piece of wood you passively lean on to a mobilized, active socio-political movement that causes absolute upheaval.
Man, that completely changes the visual.
Think about the source's analogy of a literal snake sitting quietly on a path. If you poke it, it springs into rapid, terrifying action, creating immediate panic and demanding attention.
Right.
Moses is being told, take your stagnant, passive reliance, your quiet community, and transform it into an active, dynamic, living movement that will strike fear into the heart of tyranny.
But a dynamic movement alone isn't enough, is it?
What do you mean?
Well, you can have a massively mobilized crowd in the streets, you can have all the energy in the world, but if they don't have a clear, unified message, it's just a riot. It fizzles out.
That is absolutely true.
And I think this logically brings us to the second famous trick in this story. Because right after the staff, Moses is told to put his hand into his armpit and draw it out, and it comes out glowing white.
Ah, yes. The Yadi Baiza, the radiant hand. And once again, our source completely dismantles the physical anomaly here.
Oh, thank goodness.
This is not about his skin pigment miraculously changing or his hand becoming a literal glowing light bulb like something out of a superhero movie.
Because honestly, that part always felt a bit random to me. Like, here's a snake to scare them, and here's a glowing hand to confuse them. I never understood the tactical value of a glowing hand.
It feels random because for centuries we haven't been reading the social physics of the text.
Okay, so what is the actual physics here?
In the linguistic and metaphorical context of ancient Arabic, drawing out a white, radiant hand, Yadi Baiza represents presenting a flawless, radiant, pure ideology.
In ideology.
Yes. The hand, or yad, often symbolizes power, reach, or argument. And white, baiza, symbolizes that which is clear, unblemished, and evident.
Okay.
The text calls it Ayati Kubra, the greatest sign or the ultimate evidence. It represents an ideological manifesto that is completely transparent, spotless, and logically impossible to argue against.
But again, I have to ask, aren't we swinging the pendulum a bit far? How do we know white hand meant transparent manifesto back then?
Because the Arabic idiom supports it perfectly.
Yeah.
Even in classical poetry, having a white argument or a white hand over someone meant you had an undeniable favor, a clear proof.
Like an open and shut case.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's an argument so bright and unblemished that it dispels the darkness of ignorance or corruption. You are bringing forth evidence that is completely out in the open.
Okay, that actually makes perfect sense. And when you put it in a real-world context, it's devastating. Let's modernize the metaphor for you, the listener.
Say for it.
Imagine you are a whistleblower. You don't just walk into the boardroom of a massively corrupt multinational corporation and say, hey, look, I can do a magic trick with my hand.
Right. They would laugh you out of the room, call security, or throw you in a psych ward.
It would accomplish absolutely nothing. But what happens if you walk into that corrupt boardroom with a perfectly transparent, airtight, impeccably researched manifesto, the white hand?
Now you have their attention.
Right. A document that exposes every single hidden, dark, corrupt practice they do and provides a crystal clear, flawless, empirically proven alternative system.
It's undeniable.
And what if, outside the building, you have rallied a massive, grassroots, dynamic movement, the staff that has come to life? Now you are a genuine existential threat.
Now you have a revolution. The white hand is the stark, undeniable contrast to the dark corruption of the current regime. It is the transparent truth.
So let's look at the sequence here. Moses has audited his assets.
Sure.
He has his dynamic, mobilized organization, and he has his flawless, transparent ideology.
Right.
But, I mean, an ideology in a vacuum doesn't mean anything. Who exactly is he deploying this against? Why is this massive mission even necessary? You don't build a geopolitical movement and write an airtight manifesto just to sit in the desert and feel good about yourself.
No, you do it because you are facing a structural catastrophe. And this brings us to the specific calculated description of the enemy in the text. God tells Moses to go to Pharaoh and gives a very specific solitary reason.
What's the reason?
Innahutaga.
Indeed, he has transgressed.
Right. But we really have to unpack this word tugyan. Because in traditional theology, we often just reduce Pharaoh to being a bad guy, right?
Like a cartoon villain, just mean for the sake of being mean, or arrogant just because he has a big ego.
Exactly. But tugyan is a highly specific term in social physics. It literally means a boiling over, a breaking of all natural and economic bounds.
It's boiling over.
Think of a river bursting its banks and destroying the villages around it. It is the setting up of unproven assertions of absolute human sovereignty over other humans.
So it's not just that he's an arrogant individual, it's that his entire system has breached the levees. It has flooded and destroyed the natural order of human dignity.
Exactly. Our source material outlines that under this tyranny, this tugyan, there aren't just hurt feelings. We have to look at the historical and structural reality of Pharaoh's Egypt.
It wasn't just one guy being a bully.
Not at all. There were three systemic evils operating simultaneously, acting as an interlocking iron vice on humanity. These three pillars sustained each other perfectly.
Okay, let's spend some time walking through those three pillars, because I think this is where the text gets chillingly relevant for you, the listener, even today.
Absolutely.
How did this architecture of power actually function?
The first pillar is physical and political autocracy. This is the dictatorship itself, embodied by Pharaoh. The source describes it as the iron, bone-crushing grip on the physical bodies of the people.
The brute force.
Yes, whether it's an ancient monarch, a modern dictator, or even certain contemporary forms of unaccountable governance, where a centralized group has an absolute monopoly on violence. It's the military, the secret police, the executioners.
It's the literal crushing of bones. If you speak out, you disappear. You are forced into physical labor.
That's right.
But a dictator can't run a state just on violence alone, right? Violence is expensive, it takes resources. So what's the second pillar that sustains the first?
The second pillar is economic monopolization. In the Quranic narrative, this is often represented by the historical figure of Qarun, or Korah.
Okay, what does that look like?
This is a system of absolute hoarding. It's an economic structure where the masses are made entirely dependent. The state, or the oligarchs, control the granaries, the wealth, the resources.
They hold all the cards.
Exactly. It creates a dynamic where citizens are like circus animals, forced to perform or obey just to get their meager share of the bread, while a tiny elite hoards all the capital. It is unchecked, predatory capitalism that breaks all economic bounds and feeds the political autocracy.
Yeah, so you have the political autocrat crushing your bones with the military, and the economic hoarder starving your stomach if you don't comply.
It's a tight grip.
That sounds like a perfectly sealed trap. I mean, how do you even fight that? But there is a third pillar, isn't there? And this third pillar is the one that really gets inside your head and makes the other two invisible.
The third pillar is psychological and religious manipulation, the priesthood.
Ah.
The religious establishment, often represented in the text by Haman, that partners with the autocrat. And the source makes a brilliant, terrifying point here.
What's that?
With political tyranny, you have the visible police and the physical prisons. With economic tyranny, you have the visible poverty. But with psychological tyranny, there are no physical chains.
None at all.
Yet people sit in their own homes, trembling, crying, and bowing willingly out of sheer terror.
Because the prison is in their minds. They've actually internalized their own oppression.
Exactly. The religious manipulators enslave the mind. They convince the masses that the autocrat's rule is divine will.
Oh, that's dark.
They tell the starving peasants that the poverty they suffer is their spiritual test, and that if they are patient, they will be rewarded in the afterlife.
So it pacifies them.
Totally. Most insidiously, they teach that to rebel against the oppressor is to rebel against God himself. It is the ultimate invisible tyranny.
Wow.
The text points out a tragic reality. People will curse the physical dictator in their hearts, but they will willingly kneel before the religious manipulator, kiss their hand, and give them their last coin.
Because the fear has bypassed their logic and infected their deepest psychology.
Exactly.
Okay, that is an absolute aha moment for me. When you look at Pharaoh, not just as a guy with a golden crown, but as the apex of a three-pillared system of physical, economic, and psychological terror.
Changes everything.
It completely changes the entire nature of Moses' mission. Moses isn't being sent by God to perform a theological debate about religious ritual.
No, not at all.
He's not walking into the court to argue about how to pray or what to wear or how to perform a sacrifice.
No. If we connect this to the bigger picture, Moses is being deployed to confront an out-of-control political regime. He is being sent to dismantle a system that claims absolute authority over human dignity.
Right.
And he's doing it using empirical truth, the radiant white hand of his manifesto and structural organizing, the dynamic moving staff of his people.
So what does this all mean for you listening? It means recognizing that the ultimate battle in these texts isn't over superstition or ancient mythology.
Exactly.
It's about dismantling systems that claim absolute authority over human beings. It's about recognizing when political violence, economic hoarding, and psychological manipulation combine to crush human potential.
That is the true definition of tuck-in.
And this raises a massive, vital question. If you are about to walk into the throne room of the most powerful, tyrannical autocrat on earth, a man who controls the army, the entire economy, and the religious narrative of your society, you don't just need a good argument and a mobilized crowd.
No, you need something much deeper.
You need absolute, unbreakable, superhuman nerve, which is the perfect logical transition into the next massive shift in the narrative.
Right.
Because right after God gives him this impossible mission to go face Pharaoh's tugyan, Moses asks for something very specific. He makes a profound plea. He says, Rabbi Sharh li Sadri, expand my chest.
Sharh al-Sadr. This is perhaps one of the most fundamentally misunderstood concepts in traditional interpretation.
Seriously.
And our source material does not hold back in dismantling the superstition that is built up around it over the centuries.
Yeah, the speaker in the source literally mocks the traditional idea, this bizarre, almost graphic, superstitious narrative,
Wow.
that Moses's or even the Prophet Muhammad's chest was physically, literally sliced open by angels with surgical tools, their physical heart taken out, were washed in snow or holy water, and put back into their chest to make them brave.
It is a childishly literal reading of a profound psychological metaphor.
Sounds like a bad fantasy novel.
The source points out that this physical, supernatural alteration completely misses the point of human struggle. It degrades the entire concept of moral courage.
Exactly.
If an angel physically alters your heart or hardwires your brain to make you brave, what is the achievement?
Right. If I'm given a divine cheat code for bravery, it's not actually bravery. I'm just a robot programmed not to feel fear. It removes the free will and the immense personal struggle from the equation entirely.
Precisely. The source completely redefines Sharh al-Sadr as a profound, critical psychological upgrade.
A psychological upgrade, I like that.
Let's look at the words. Sharh means to open, to expand, to clarify, to lay out plainly.
Okay.
Sadr is the chest. But metaphorically in Arabic, it's the seat of your intellect, your emotional capacity, your psychological endurance.
I think a better way to look at this, rather than the old firmware update cliche, is to think of it like structural engineering.
Okay, let's hear it.
If you are building a two-story house, you just need a standard foundation. But if you are building a massive skyscraper, you need a foundation that is immensely deep and incredibly flexible, an expanded chest, right?
Right.
So that when the high-altitude winds hit it, the building can sway and absorb the kinetic energy without snapping in half?
That is an excellent analogy. It is the mental capacity and the sheer nerve required to face down a global superpower without flinching and without snapping under the pressure.
Because the pressure is going to be insane.
Think about what Moses is about to do. He is going to stand before Pharaoh, surrounded by hostile guards and cynical priests. The source notes that when you face a tyrant, the natural human reaction is typically one of two extremes.
What are they?
Either paralyzing, submissive fear,
You freeze up.
or blind, raging, uncontrolled anger.
Oh, right. And we have to remember Moses' specific history here. He had previously killed an Egyptian taskmaster in a moment of protective, uncalculated rage.
Yes, that's a crucial point. He knows his own flaws.
He knows he has a temper, and he knows that temper has gotten him into massive trouble before. It forced him into exile.
Exactly. So Sharh al-Sadr is the ultimate plea for emotional regulation and psychological resilience.
It's anger management, but on a geopolitical scale.
It means, give me the capacity so that when I am mocked by Pharaoh, when I am publicly humiliated by his priests, when I am threatened with torture and death, I do not let personal anger take over.
Wow.
I do not suffer from narrow-mindedness. I do not lose sight of the grand ideological mission just to settle a petty personal score, and I do not freeze in terror.
The source mentions that fighting tyranny places an immense, back-breaking psychological burden on a leader. The sheer weight of responsibility for a whole nation of oppressed, traumatized people could easily crush you.
The Sharh al-Sadr is the process of building the emotional and intellectual infrastructure within yourself so you don't collapse under that weight.
Right.
It's the resilience to absorb the shock of opposition. When the enemy's propaganda machine attacks you, a narrow chest tightens, panics, and lashes out defensively.
It reacts purely on instinct.
But an expanded chest Sharh al-Sadr absorbs the blow, processes it logically, and responds with the flawless, radiant logic of the white hand.
So he is building the psychological foundation to carry the movement. But even with the deepest foundation in the world, a skyscraper still needs a structural framework.
Yes, it does.
And the law of social physics dictates that solitary heroes fail.
They absolutely fail. The lone savior is another one of those Hollywood myths that has completely infected our reading of history.
And yes, the cinematic trope where one guy with a sword or one guy with a magic staff walks into the enemy stronghold, takes down the whole empire by himself, and walks out in slow motion while things explode behind him.
It's ridiculous. It doesn't happen in the real world.
Never.
You need structure. You need an organization, which is why Moses' very next request in the text is Ukatan min lisani. Untie the knot of my tongue.
And here we go again with the source dismantling another massive historical myth. The traditional story is that when Moses was a baby in Pharaoh's court, he playfully grabbed Pharaoh's beard. Pharaoh got paranoid and angry and wanted to execute the baby. So, to prove the baby didn't know what he was doing, The advisors put a shiny jewel and a burning hot coal in front of him.
And then what happens?
Supposedly, an angel guided baby Moses' hand to put the hot coal in his mouth. He burned his tongue and lived with a literal stutter or speech impediment for the rest of his life.
The source calls this out as a fabricated fable, a fairy tale derived from outside lore that actually degrades the dignity of the narrative.
It really does sound bizarre when you say it out loud.
The knot in the tongue is not a physical speech impediment caused by a baby eating a hot coal. Again, we are missing the social physics for the sake of a campfire story.
So if it's not a stutter, what is the knot?
It is pure organizational strategy and communication physics.
Okay, unpack that.
When you are introducing a radically new revolutionary system to an oppressed people who have been brainwashed for generations,
Right.
and simultaneously presenting it to a hostile regime that desperately wants to twist your words, you cannot afford to be misunderstood for a single second.
You have to be precise.
Exactly. Moses is asking for the ability to deliver perfectly transparent, logical, and fluent propaganda.
The text says, Yafqahu qawli, so they may understand my speech.
Exactly. If the masses can't easily digest and verify the ideology, the movement dies in the cradle. A knot in the tongue, in this context, means an inability to articulate complex structural truths in a way that resonates with the common person on the street.
That makes total sense. I mean, Moses spent years in the desert as a solitary shepherd.
Right, talking to sheep.
He asked him to transition his communication style from a quiet pastoral life to the absolute highest levels of diplomatic and revolutionary discourse. He needs his message to be unknotted, entirely clear, logically sound, and utterly compelling.
Because if you walk into the throne room and your manifesto is too academically dense or you stumble over your geopolitical theory, Pharaoh's PR team, those priests we talk about, will eat you alive.
They will spin your words and make you look like a fool in front of the masses.
Precisely. But even with perfectly clear speech and an expanded chest, one person is still not enough.
Right.
Which is why the very next thing Moses asks for is a wazir. He asks for his brother, Aaron.
He says, Wajali waziran min yali, Haruna aki, appoint for me a minister from my family, Aaron, my brother. Now, on the surface, this looks a little suspicious, doesn't it?
How so?
It looks like nepotism, like, hey, God, I'm starting this massive revolution. Can you give my brother a cushy executive job in the new administration?
That is exactly how a cynic would read it, but again, we have to look at the linguistic root of the word wazir.
Okay, what does it mean?
Today, in modern Arabic or Urdu, we translate it as a government minister, a guy in a suit with a portfolio.
Sure.
But linguistically, the ancient root means a burden sharer. It comes from the concept of carrying an impossibly heavy physical load.
Oh.
Moses is saying, this geopolitical mission, this immense tugging we are facing, the psychological and structural burden is too heavy for one set of shoulders.
He needs backup.
He says, I need someone to share the weight of this ideology.
And the text gets even more specific, proving it's not just a vanity title. Moses says, Ushdud bihi azri, strengthen my back through him, and ashri kufi amri, let him share my task.
That phrase, ashri kufi amri, is the absolute cornerstone of institutional clarity. He is asking for distributed responsibility.
The death of the one-man show.
Exactly. Moses recognizes that to dismantle a systemic, three-pillared tyranny, you cannot rely on a single charismatic leader. If the leader falls, the movement dies. You need an institutional structure. You need a unified team.
But I have to ask, why his brother? Is it really just because they share blood? The source text makes a big point about the word Ali, my family.
Yes, the speaker in the source emphasizes a profound Quranic concept. True family Ali is not determined merely by biological blood relation.
Oh, really?
It is determined by ideological alignment. We see this clearly in the story of Noah, where Noah's biological son is drowning in the flood, and Noah pleads for him, calling him his family.
Right.
And God tells Noah he is not of your Ali because his conduct is unrighteous.
Ah, so sharing DNA doesn't guarantee you share the same moral compass or ideological worldview?
Exactly. So when Moses asks for Aaron from his Ali, he is not relying on nepotism. Aaron isn't chosen because they share a mother. Aaron is chosen because they share the exact same intellectual frequency and ideological capability.
They're on the exact same wavelength.
Completely. Aaron has the fluency, the deep understanding of the Egyptian court's psychology, and the ideological purity to actually share the burden.
It's not about giving a job to a relative. It's about finding the absolute best co-leader for this mission, someone who completely gets the vision and can carry half the structural weight when the political pressure from Pharaoh gets unbearable.
And we have to look at the ultimate purpose of this dual leadership structure. Moses explicitly explained why he needs Aaron, why he needs his chest expanded, and why he needs his tongue unknotted.
Okay.
And this is where the source completely radically redefines the traditional concept of worship. Moses says, "Kainas abihaka katharan, wanut kraka katharan,"
Which is usually translated as, so that we may glorify you much and remember you much, which honestly sounds like a massive anticlimax.
It really does.
I mean, you build this incredible socio-political movement, you get the Radiant Manifesto, you set up a dual leadership structure, just so you can sit in a quiet corner, count prayer beads, and chant God's name all day.
And our source vehemently, forcefully rejects that static, passive, monastic interpretation. The speaker breaks down the ancient linguistic roots of the words sabi and zikr.
Let's unpack sabi, because the explanation of this word in the source material absolutely blew my mind.
The root of sabi does not mean sitting still and whispering words of praise. It involves rapid, vigorous, intentional physical movement.
Both the movement.
Yes. Historically, it is used to describe a powerful horse galloping at full speed, giving every single ounce of its energy on the battlefield. Or it describes a swimmer using all their physical strength to cut through rough water, employing the breaststroke, moving forward with intent and power so they don't drown.
So it is fundamentally about expending massive amounts of energy.
Maximum energy.
Yeah.
Moses is not asking for a partner so they can hold a polite prayer circle in the desert.
Right.
He is saying to God, give me this team, give me Aaron, give me this mental clarity and this transparent ideology so that we can expend every single ounce of our physical, intellectual, and organizational energy to elevate your system of justice.
That is incredible.
To glorify God Sabi in this context means to practically, physically establish a system where God's laws of justice, equity, and human dignity reign supreme, actively replacing the bone-crushing tyranny of Pharaoh.
It's worship defined as vigorous, relentless, socio-political action. That changes everything. And what about the second word, zikr? Usually translated as remembering God.
Zikr does mean to keep something in mind, but in a socio-political context, it means to elevate its mention, to make it the dominant paradigm of society.
The dominant paradigm.
Moses is saying they need to work tirelessly, Catherine, meaning much, abundantly, constantly, to ensure that the empirical truth, the divine law of justice, becomes the prevailing reality and the dominant discourse in society.
They are working to displace the unproven, tyrannical assertions of Pharaoh.
They're changing the entire conversation.
It's about fundamentally changing the dominant narrative. They are going to replace Pharaoh's state propaganda with the zikr of universal justice. This is incredible. When you look at it through the lens of this source material, the entire narrative transforms from top to bottom.
It really does.
It's no longer a magical fairy tale about a man with a magic wand. It is a meticulous, step-by-step manual for dismantling systemic oppression.
It's the ultimate logical progression of preparation. Every step builds the necessary foundation for the next.
Which brings us to the incredible sequence principle we've been tracking throughout this deep dive. Let's look at the countdown here, because it is flawlessly logical.
Let's do it.
Moses was alone in the cold. But he didn't rush in blindly. First, he rigorously audited his tools, transforming his passive economic reliance into a dynamic, mobilized movement, the staff becoming the living vitality.
Step 1.
Second, he received the radiant, flawless, transparent ideology to counter the darkness, the white hand.
Step 2.
Third, he correctly and surgically diagnosed the 3 pillars of Pharaoh's Tugyan, the political, economic, and psychological tyranny.
Step 3.
Fourth, he downloaded the ultimate psychological upgrade of Sharh al-Sadr, expanding his emotional capacity to handle the terrifying burden without breaking.
Step 4.
And finally, he secured his institutional structure by bringing on a co-leader, a wazir, to share the massive burden of this relentless, galloping action.
He has assembled the perfect storm. The team is ready, the strategy is set, and the tools are weaponized. But now they actually have to walk into the palace and look the dictator in the eye. In Lecture 414, covering Ayat 3652, we are going to look at the historical retrospective of Moses' preparation and the opening rhetorical salvos dropped right in front of Pharaoh's throne. Get ready, because the ideological fireworks are about to start.
I literally have goosebumps. The ideological fireworks. We started this deep dive by taking away your CGI movie scenes, the comforting magic tricks, and the literal snakes. We told you the historical landscape was murky and complex.
And we gave you the real physics.
Exactly. But now, hopefully, you can see the brilliant blueprint hidden underneath. It's not magic, it's machinery, it's the highest level of social physics. And the final thought I want to leave you with is this. If Moses had to rigorously audit his tools, upgrade his entire psychological mindset, and build an unbreakable team just to speak truth to power, what is the staff in your own hand right now, and what comfortable reality are you leaning on instead of throwing it down?